all different kinds of camouflage patterns. Hello, this is BJ from Hearns Hobbies, and welcome back to another unboxing. And this time I'm going to have a bit of a classic. I don't know, is it a classic? This is the Italeri 1/35 scale StuG IV. Now, there's been a lot of talk about StuG IIIs recently, all different scales and interior detail, exterior detail. But this is one of those really classic kits. I think it's been around for a while. It's been remastered, and I'll have a look at the plastic and we'll see what's the difference there. But it comes with a few little extras too, and you'll see those on the box here. Okay, so it comes with some photo-etch and also an aluminium barrel. Okay, so that's the StuG IV. Now, what is StuG IV? Okay, so StuG IV is basically, looks very similar to a StuG III. Okay, so it's not actually a tank per se, it is an assault gun, because a tank would normally have a turret which traverses here and the gun can turn around. This is basically has a gun mounted in a casemate. So it's locked in place, but it can have a little bit of movement here and here. So most of the major aiming, if it needed to move a lot, was operated by the driver, who was under here. Now, the overall look is similar between StuG III and a StuG IV, except that a StuG IV has a longer chassis, so certain parts were elongated. Now, the casemate, I think, is pretty much the same, which is that top bit. Now, what they had to do was they had to extend this part here to encapsulate the driver. So those are the parts that are different. Now, the other way to tell is when you look at, let's see, when you look on the profile, now you can see the extended section there for the driver, and then there's an extra set of bogies from memory because the StuG IV or the Panzer IV had a long chassis. Okay, so there we go. Now, why was the StuG IV produced? Because initially they actually started making this thing, which is the Panzer IV. So when you got these two together, it's like, wow, they're very similar machines. Why would you need both? Well, basically this was designed as the Panzer IV version of the assault gun, and it had sloped armor and it was all great in that respect. And they were planning on putting the big long L70 gun on it, which is the Panther gun. Originally they had the L48s, which were smaller. These only came out later in the war. Now, during that time, these were harder to produce, and also with the StuG IIIs, StuG IIIs they actually produced over 10,000 of them. The factory was bombed and production dropped. And at that stage, the idea of a StuG IV became popular because they were casemates, so I just retrofit them, and bingo, you end up with one of these. So these were quicker to build than the Panzer IV, and they're also cheaper, and they were lighter as well. So performance was very good. Okay, let's have a close look at the inside kit bits. Lots of grey plastic. Now I've got our tank tracks there. Now that doesn't look very old, does it? So I'm guessing that this is probably the freshened up bit. And then we've got some of these parts here, which are probably from an earlier kit, looking at some of the components. Okay, so let's just put this aside and we'll start with one bag at a time. So let's have a look here. We're going to have two big sets of sprues with lots of wheels and lots of tracks. So these are what we'll call the semi-individual, because they're not totally individual. We've got 3 sprue here. They're all identical. As you can imagine, the running tracks on these tanks, well, they had a lot of wheels and a lot of tracks. So you've got some individual sections. So the individual ones would be for achieving the sag and also for going around the sprocket wheels. And then we have some flat sections there, which would be for some of the straighter parts. Let's have a closer look at these. I won't look at the other two because they're just going to be identical, but let's have a close look at this. And we'll see how sharp these bits are. Okay, so you can see the individual track links there. Seems they're quite well molded. I do have some injection marks on the inside though. So if you did really want to clean this up, actually I haven't got the focus quite right yet. No, it's better. You will need to fill those and sand them slightly, which can be quite tedious, but that's what you do if you want a perfect finish. Now there's a section of track all together, I actually don't know if that's for the flat bits or if that's actually spare track that goes around the outside of the hull, but I'll see that in the manual a bit later. Here we've got some all the idler wheels, the little tiny ones, and then you've got all the drive wheels along here. Spin them around. So the spoke detail there. It's a very classical Panzer IV spoke pattern. And as we get towards the bottom here, past all that, over here you've got this part which is the muzzle brake, which will be used for gluing onto the aluminium barrel. And then we've got your rear idler. This looks like exhaust systems. Other side of the muzzle. And then you've got some of the hubcaps for the wheels. Okay, so they're the wheel sections, or such. Let's put that aside here. Alright, and then we'll get into the big bag. Which will probably be better seen without this matte and the white. Now, this will have all your big bulky bits. Put this over here. Right, so quite a variety of parts. Let's start looking at some of this bigger stuff. Right, so here we have the sprue with bottom of the hull. We have the casemate, and then the extended section is quite obvious there for the driver's compartment. So usually this casemate from here to here would be from the StuG III, and then you've got that extension. You've got the Sauerkopf, which is the cast mantlet. Because it's sort of later in the war, I think most of these StuG IVs came with the Sauerkopf. A lot of the StuG IIIs initially came out with the boxy type welded variety. And then you see all the detail there of actual hull as well. You see how that's all hollow. And then you've got points on the side for all the idle wheels and the drive wheels. You've got the big panels here, which would be for the, what do you call it again? The side skirts, which is, it'll come to me, the German name. This is a support for the side skirts. The Schützen, that's what it is. And then we've got a machine gun guard. We actually got a photo-etched part that will replace that. And then you've got some supports for the Schützen mounts as well. Let's get a bit tighter in there and have a closer look at some of this stuff. Alright, so let's start off with, there's a Sauerkopf. See that in the two halves. It's actually got quite a bit of the gun there as well. Even though you may not see much of it, if you left all of the hatches open, you'll see some of it. So a little bit of detail is quite a nice touch. Now, Italeri is probably not talked about all that much now for their armour, but in the 70s and 80s, they were the pick of some very high quality kits. And you're probably, if you ever watched any of, or read any of Francois Valinden's books, he quite often used Italeri kits for his dioramas and builds. Okay, so you've got a rifle there. You've got the hooks, the S-hooks. Variety of tools. And here's some of those supports for the Schützen mount. There's an engine tick mount as well. And then as we look into the hull detail, you can see all those bolts. So the detail is quite good. A lot of people may poo-poo some of these older kits. I mean, this has been freshened up for sure, and just by looking at it from here, it is looking fairly clean. Okay, so that's that part. Now let's get on to the next lot of large parts. Okay, so you've still got a lot of Schützen here, so you've got all the other bits of Schützen. There's a figurine. Got the rear of the hull. And then you have all the bogey assemblies. You got the drive sprocket. Got a whole lot of these little discs here, which are probably for the wheels to make them rotate. Got a feeling you don't use them in this particular kit. A lot more tools along here. And then on this side as well. Okay, so there's the original plastic gun with the muzzle brake on it. You can always use that as a spare. I'm not going to be using it on this one because they give you a really nice aluminium barrel. Okay, so let's have a close look at these details. Okay, so there's your drive sprockets. They're actually quite fine. These are all those discs I spoke about earlier. Got a feeling they're not used at all. You got some grab handles. Actually, they're the mounting hooks that are on the Schürzen. Got the jack. You got an MP40. Some wire cutters. Got your axe. Parts of bogies. There's a gun there that you're not going to be using. Also an MG34. Some more discs. Various bits and pieces. And there's the back of the hull. Quite a nice detail there. Okay, now from there, this is our last sheet of parts. Okay, so you got the rest of the drive sprockets right here. You've got the mud guards, I guess. Another MG34 here. This one is, I don't know if that's the one that's used. We'll check the instructions. Got a lot of finer parts here. Got the front of the hull. Got some hatches. Got a mantler here, which is from a Panzer IV. So this is quite a common part used for another Panzer IV actual tank. A lot of those parts aren't going to be used within this one. There's another back section here. Got some coiled rope. Let's have a closer look. Okay, you've got some jerry cans too. Probably no room for jerry cans on this particular StuG, but you've got plenty of spares. There's the handles for them. This part, not too sure what that is. Part of a gun, maybe? You can see how the coiled rope is very well done there. You get some more idlers there. The size of the engine compartment, the radiators. That's the other back of the hull. Not too sure what the difference is there. Got your hatches. Top section of the hull. There's a cupola, which you're not going to use. Got mud flaps. You're not going to use those either because there's photo-etched versions. Machine gun, and then you've got these covers, the mud flappy bits. You can see how they've got that tread plate. So we can get it in the shadow just right so you can see that. Tread plate looks quite good on those. It's very fine. Okay, and that's it for all of the plastic parts, which means we're left with some special bits. We've got a set of decals. Decals are pretty simple, I guess. It's just got some German crosses on it, variety of numbers. We have the photo-etch. So quite thick brass photo-etch. You've got the covers here for the radiators. You got a gun shield, and then you've got the what do you call them? They're not mud flaps. Are they mud flaps? Front and rear. They get folded up, and there's a few other details there as well. All very nice touches. And then in the back here, we have the aluminium machined barrel. So what's so good about a machined barrel? It's going to be perfectly straight, and it's not going to have any of the mold lines, and it'll be perfectly cylindrical as well. So that's the advantages of having a machined barrel. Nice additions. Now, since we've got that, let's just have a closer look at decals. There you go, nothing super special about them. They're quite crisply printed. There you go, specific for the StuG IV. Okay, a couple of white markings there as well. Okay, let's go into the manual. So the manual is quite big. Might have to zoom out for that one. Whoop, gone the wrong way. Alright, let's make sure that's focused. Good. No, gone the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so we've got multiple languages there. As we open up, we've got the legend, and I mean, that's a very telltale sign. All these dark grey parts, they're the parts that you're not going to be used. So these are the parts that would have been used for a Panzer IV, not for the StuG IV. Then down the bottom here, you got the photo etch, and then the middle barrel as well, and a colour chart. So this side, you've got variations for the markings and the colours, but we start with the assembly. Just in here, this is all going to fold out. Okay, so building the hull, you've got the whole end with all the drive sprockets and idlers going in. Then you've got the bogies for the main drive wheels. Rear end, we've got the exhaust going on and the cable. Here's the individual tracks. So yes, some of the flat sections are used for the base, and then all the individuals are used for getting the sag, I guess you call it. Next we make the gun. Okay, so that's the L70, which was used on the Panther. That's popped into the casemate. You've got the engine deck details. Move onto the top of the hull. Okay, so you've got open or closed hatches for the driver's hatch. Now we've got the mud flaps. Okay, so you need to chop off the plastic ones and then fold up the photo etch ones and glue those into place. So same with the left and the right. And then we marry up the casemate with the hull. You've got the mud guards going on, and then you've got the rest of the detail on the top. So there's a machine gun shield, which is photo etched. Got a few bits on the front end. You've got the spare tracks. A few more details on the mud flap. And then we get into the covers for the radiators. Spare track on the top, little details. The holder for the spare road wheels is also photo etched, so you need to fold that all up there. This is all the rear mud flaps. They're getting folded in photo etch as well. End up doing the Schürzen. So there's the big, I guess it's the rack for holding up the Schürzen. You got each individual shield there with hooks on each that just go on. You got left and right. And then you end up at the back here with 4 different versions which are possible. So they're all late versions, 1944, all different kinds of camouflage patterns. So there we go. So that is my open box review of the Italeri StuG IV in 1/35 scale. So if you like this open box, please give me a like below. And if you'd like to see more of this kind of open boxing or anything modeling related, just please think about subscribing. So thank you for joining me.